Hi, my name's Steve Cox, and this is my Audi Quattro tribute to the Group B Audi Quattros. I'd admired a car that a guy called Andrew Hawkswood had built some 14, 15 years ago, and he sold that, and he decided he was going to build a new one, but build it more as a tribute rather than his previous one. And I said, well, how effective is it to build two rather than one? And he said, very. So I said, well, let's build two together. Turned out I've got one. He's pulled the pin on building his at this stage. He might come back to it. But we decided to build this as a tribute. Too hard to build a replica down here in New Zealand. There's just not enough parts around to build a replica, so it's a tribute. It looks right, sounds right, has the right running gear as far as engine, gearbox and diff, but there's modern things in it, as like the Haltech engine management. This is an Audi Quattro 3B engine, they call it, so it's from the 80s. Back then they were a engine that was with a distributor on them, so we've changed that a bit. But the whole engine bay of the car is fundamentally similar-ish to what Audi came out with. We've managed to set the engine back at probably 100mm. We've ended up with a big gap over here where they normally had air conditioning and all sorts of other stuff, and I think their plenum was slightly different. But obviously we've got a big honking turbo as well. We've taken the radiator out of the front, it's now in the boot, so we've only got the intercooler and the cooler for the power steering is the only things in the front. It's dry sumped, runs a 4-stage dry sump pump. Put new pistons in, so they're forged pistons, forged rods. Crank is a standard crank because they're good for 1,000 horsepower and we don't need anything like that. Head's been extensively worked. Camshafts are reprofiled to a better cam that suits the turbo. It has adjustable cam gears, even though it looks like it's only a single cam engine. It's actually a 20 valve twin cam engine, so there's a gear set inside the rocker cover that runs the other gear, and they're both adjustable in reference to each other and on the pulley behind the carbon cover. We've built our own injection manifold, imported a carbon plenum from overseas. Setup we've got for the turbo, the extractors are custom made, so all out of stainless steel, high wall thickness. It's a Steve Murch turbo, so he's a very well-regarded turbo builder in New Zealand. He's designed a specific turbo for us that's is to provide what we wanted. So we run two different front covers. This one for our big horsepower, so at the moment it's tuned for 350 horse at the wheels, which on gravel is fairly adequate. It will run 700 if we want to crank up the boost a bit higher. At the moment we're running about 18 pound, but the whole engine is designed to go to 25, 27 pound. We'll get there at some point, but we're also going to go rallying in it, so we have a different cover with a 36mm restrictor in it that Steve's got sorted out for us. That we just changed the cover, put a new tune into the ECU, and away we go. Normal exhaust wastegate sitting here that dumps into the pipe, straight 3-inch pipe all the way through, no mufflers, complies with New Zealand noise restrictions quite happily. At 4,000 revs, maybe not quite so much when the anti-lag's turned on, or at 7,000 revs, it's a bit noisier than that. Then we run both of these valves are turbo smart, so we run a turbo smart anti-lag valve as well, and that lets us off throttle. It'll open a pathway through from the compressor side of the turbo straight into the exhaust. The Nexus dumps a bit more fuel into the manifolds, and we end up with keeping the turbo spooled up that way. So. Been racing since I was in my early 20s, and I'm now, shall we say, 40 years older than that. Rallying back in the early days in Datsuns and Escorts, and then a Daihatsu Charade of all things, GTTI, went really well in that. Kept crashing too much, youth and exuberance led to too much panel damage, so I went circuit racing. Basically pulled out of rallying for some 25 years. Enjoyed circuit racing, but always had a bit of an itch to go back rallying. And then really it was Hayden Paddon putting rallying back on the stage in New Zealand and I kept saying, well, I haven't retired from rallying, all I've done is given it up for a while. So I decided to get back in with a car that I was quicker than the car, so I built a 1984 Toyota Starlet, which I still rally today.
So 4 left plus 30. 1 5 right, minus cut into a 2. And 30. 4 right plus, into a 5 left. That's what 1 4 left.
Spent a bit of time in a Subaru, at least Subaru a couple of years ago, really as a lead up to a bit of four-wheel driving with this. But then with what Andrew had talked about and getting this was always an exciting car from my youth. And I thought, right, it's time to get into something a bit more serious. So we built this car. Sitting here is a few differences in a rally car. Obviously we have a big handbrake, so it's a quick flick. Help us just when we're coming into a tight corner, just let the back transition out a bit more. This is still an H-pattern 6-speed gearbox. It has a little lift-up lever there to lock out reverse. Everything's really in front of me here, so we do have down in between the seats 15-way keypad to control all the Haltech gear. Generally, I'll use that just to start the car and maybe the wipers if they need to go on full. The rest of it, we let the Nexus control, so all the fans are controlled by that. This looks like paddle shift gearbox. It's not. This one here is actually the wipers. So if I need a single wipe, I can just give it a single wipe. Or if we've hit a muddy patch and we need to get the washers going, I can just hold it and it'll put it into a different sequence there and wash and wipe at the same time. One on the other side, scramble boost, so if I just go, actually we need to just go a little bit faster, we can scramble boost it through there. And the rest of the stuff, generally, you know, white indicators and things like that. So it is a road car, has to be fully road legal, so we have the indicators, we have a horn, we have a high beam up, high low thing on it as well. Down here we've got the brake bias. So I know some people looked at it when we took a photo at some stage and said you're going to hit your leg. Well, it's going to be pretty hard to get my leg up there because I hit the steering wheel first. So that's brake bias. There's a Monit brake bias dial so we can see straight on there where we're set with the brake bias and where we go. Tilt and pedal box with all the master cylinders back under my feet. Then we run a camera system that basically is the same as what supercars run. So we get all that on-screen stuff of where our revs are, our speed is, what gear we're in, whether on the accelerator or brakes and what the boost is doing, and that comes through straight natively off the camera system. So really good at being able to share what we do. One pointing backwards, one pointing out the front, camera and camera, all good to go. Then of course normally I've got a nutcase sitting next to me, mate of mine, Laurie, and he'll be calling notes, so we'll be sitting here with intercom on, talking to each other, and well, he'll do the talking, I'll do the listening, and he'll be calling notes as to what we're doing on every corner of every stage. So the F40 Motorsport started some 20 odd years ago now. I ran across a couple of guys who were into motorsport and they were high precision machinists, and I embarked on a project to build a replica F40 Ferrari. I'd seen a body shell sitting in a friend of mine's workshop when I was racing a previous car and went, actually I really love to do that. We talked about a budget. That got blown completely out of the water because I changed from let's just build something basic to we built a 750 horsepower replica F40, and the F40 Motorsport has stuck since then. It's been what I've traded under with my tool making and machining business, and we've had it on every car since. For controlling this, we run a Nexus R5 and a PD16. So I've split the car up. The R5 sits up in the footwell here and controls everything from the front of the car. So it controls all the engine, all the electronics there. Doesn't control anything in the back of the car. It just has a CAN signal, goes back to the PD16, which sits behind me here. That runs the fuel pump. So we run 3 big fuel pumps, a lift pump, and then 2 high pressure pumps. And then the fans with the radiator in the boot and the oil cooler in the boot, we have to run fans on them to get them to keep cool enough. None of that gear will run those. The fans draw 30-something amps each, so we run a solid-state relay and we let the PD16 control that. PD16 does all the tail lights and the brake lights and the indicators at the back. The R5 does the indicators and the lights at the front. So we haven't run any wires from one side to the other. Keypad in the middle, which is CAN-based again. The IC7, just so that all my displays are there. CAN-bust again. We run the wideband controller. And we run EGTs through the 8-channel thermocouple. So we actually plumbed it up so we run an EGT in every one of the 5 pipes, plus the exhaust, plus pre and post intercooler. So we're using all 8 channels there to data log all of that information. Power-wise, at the moment, 350 at the wheels. We think with a restrictor somewhere closer to 300. What will change is the torque will go up, because pulling through a restrictor will naturally increase the torque anyway, which will make the car a bit more drivable. So I'll stop treating it like an naturally aspirated revving car and revving it to 7.5, and I'll probably be changing gear at 6 and just using the torque, which will benefit the way the car drives as well. So there is plans that we'll put it into some rally sprints at some period of its life, and we'll probably put 700, 800 horse out of the thing. Overseas, a similar setup to this you can pull 1,000 horsepower out of these engines quite easily. We've spec'd it's got a triple plate clutch on it, come out of the States. There's a full dog box in the thing, which is geared lower, so because we don't need the top speed. A limiter slip in the back. Those are all spec'd to be 1,000 horsepower and many Newton meters of torque capable. So we think we've done everything drivetrain-wise to be able to do full speed launches, and we've done some on gravel quite happily. Full power launches and the thing just lights its bags and takes off. The engine was built by GER Engines here in Auckland, very good friends of ours as well, but build race engines all over the place. And they spec'd out the valves and the cams and things like that, and then we got them built, the cams done by Franklin Camshafts down in Pukekohe in Auckland here. GER built the engine, been absolute magic. They've done quite a bit on my other race cars and been great. Machining work we're all done in-house at F40 Motorsport, so all the fuel rails and the various other bits, things that hold the alternator, brackets and other things are all machined in-house here. So we do all that high precision work here, and that's really what F40 Motorsport is about now, is doing high precision stuff, fitting brakes and things like that too, where you've got a brake that you want to fit something that is totally unusual. We'll do all that work as well. And yeah, it keeps the guys here amused and interested in what they do every day. Have there been some scary moments in my life? Yeah, we've had a few. One put my wife off rallying ever since, and she never gets back in a car. We had an Evo 1 Lancer back in the mid-90s, and I put it off a 30-foot bank and rolled 6 times and was unconscious at the end of it. She wasn't, and she just doesn't want to get back in a car with me rallying, which I can sort of understand. Most recently, we put a Subaru that we'd leased through a fence because it decided not to pick up 4th gear, but it should have. And no power meant we couldn't steer the thing, and we went straight through a fence. Luckily, the only fence on that stage in that section that didn't have a 100-foot drop on the other side of it, so we were able to just spin it in the paddock and come back on, but we decided to retire the car before we did any more damage to it. This started life some 5 years ago as a 2-wheel drive automatic Audi coupe. We bought the car as the base of the project, knowing that we had to change quite a few things. The real one that gets most people is the windscreen angle here is more steep than it is in the coupe, so the coupe would have been back about here. They're also 320mm shorter, so this car has no steel apart from the roll cage above this waistline. Everything is fiberglass, including the windscreen surround. We got that moulded off another car that was the right angle. If we're in the UK, you can buy the appropriate front half of the car. These were originally built out of 2 different cars. It was an Audi coupe back and an Audi B4, I think, 2-door car as a front. Don't quote me on that number, which gave the windscreen angle. So we got a mould off that, made that bit. The rest of the kit came in from Latvia, and then had to get heavily modified to actually make it fit properly, but that's what we do. The chassis was all done by Force Motorsport, so they're across the other side of Auckland here, and they spent 7 months cutting, took basically pretty much all the steel from here backwards, apart from the bit that holds the tail lights. All the floor was gone, drive tunnel was gone, all the suspension towers were gone. You could stand here and look at the other side of the car, and there was literally a piece of steel here at one stage, and that was it. They've built subframes, which it's based on the AP4 rally cars that Force developed back, and there are numerous different brands of AP4 rally car running around. So it runs the same subframes as an AP4 car, it runs the same MCA, so Murray Coote suspension out of Australia, all designed for the AP4 cars. You know, I started at 20, 21, I think I was, when I first got my first rally car, and I bought in conjunction with a mate of mine. We got out there and we ran on a shoestring. We ran the oldest tyres we could find. We worked on it ourselves to keep the costs down. We would go to events with having fixed a repair and the paint was still wet, so we'd tell them not to put the stickers on that day. So we've been right through that whole level, right to up to this that, yeah, is a little bit more expensive, but if you don't get out there and start somewhere, you'll never do it. We'll go away and have a weekend away rallying, and you can't beat it. It's just an absolute blast. We have a huge laugh. The number of people that are over 50 rallying in this country is still huge. The number of people over 60s gets a little bit less, but still big, and the 70-year-olds are still there. It's fantastic. It's a great sport.